Hey guys, tonight we journey to a place where faces tell stories older than mountains, etched with lines that speak of identity, lineage, and the very essence of being. Imagine standing before someone whose skin is not just skin, but a living canvas, a map of their soul and history. You see intricate spirals flowing across their cheekbones, sharp lines defining their jaw, patterns that seem to shift and breathe with their expressions. It's an art form so profound, so deeply embedded in culture that it transforms the wearer from a mere individual into a walking, talking archive of their ancestors and their life's path. It's called Tā Moko, the traditional facial tattooing of the Māori people of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And let me tell you, this isn't your cousin's regrettable tramp stamp. This is serious, sacred business. You probably wouldn't survive the process, or at least, not the traditional version without a whole lot of spiritual and physical fortitude you didn't know you needed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself stepping back in time, or maybe forward, into a space where the face isn't just a collection of features, but the most important visual statement you can make. Tā Moko isn't simply decoration, something you add on a whim because you saw it on Pinterest and thought, yeah, cool lines. No, it's fundamentally about who you are, where you come from, and your place in the world. It's an art form that is literally carved into the skin, not just pricked like modern tattooing, which gives it a unique texture, a grooved surface that feels different to the touch and catches the light in its own way. Think of it like carving wood, but on a living, breathing person. Sounds intense, right? It absolutely was. The history of Tā Moko is ancient, stretching back through Polynesian migrations and deep into the mists of time, connecting the Maori people to their ancestral homeland, Hawaii. It arrived in Aotearoa with the first canoes, carried not just in memory and skill, but perhaps even on the skin of those early voyagers. This wasn't a practice invented upon arrival. It was a cultural inheritance, adapted and refined over centuries in the specific environment of Aotearoa. The art evolved, becoming increasingly intricate, distinctively Maori, reflecting the unique flora, fauna, and spiritual landscape of the land. When you look at a face adorned with traditional Tā Moko, you aren't just seeing a picture. You're reading a biography, a genealogy, a declaration of status and achievement. Every line, every curve, every pattern holds meaning. It's a visual language, understood by those who know how to read it. Imagine walking around with your entire family tree, your social standing, your personal triumphs and challenges, all laid out on your face for the world to see. It's a level of transparency and pride in identity that's almost unfathomable in our modern, often anonymous, world. The sheer artistry involved is breathtaking. Tohunga Tā Moko, the expert practitioners, were highly respected individuals, possessing not only immense artistic skill but also profound spiritual knowledge. This wasn't a casual hobby. It required years of training, deep understanding of cultural protocols, and a connection to the spiritual realm. The process itself was fraught with tapu, or sacred restrictions. It wasn't something undertaken lightly, by either the artist or the recipient. Think about the commitment. Once it's on your face, it's on your face. There's no laser removal in traditional Maori society. This is a lifelong declaration. This is the ultimate, no regrets, tattoo, because regrets wasn't really an option. It speaks volumes about the permanence of identity and the importance placed on one's standing within the community. It's not just about looking cool, it's about belonging, about honoring your ancestors, and about claiming your place in the present. Historically, Tā Moko was a mark of high status. Chiefs, warriors, and people of rank wore the most elaborate moko, particularly on their faces. A full facial moko, a moko kanohi, was the ultimate statement of prestige and authority. To be without moko, especially for a high-ranking man, was considered a sign of low status or even cowardice. It was something you earned, something that marked your transition into adulthood and your readiness to take on the responsibilities of your position. While the specific origins are shrouded in myth, The practice of Tā Moko is a mainstream historical fact deeply documented in early European accounts of encounters with Māori. Explorers, missionaries, and traders all noted the striking appearance of Māori adorned with moko, often sketching or describing the patterns in their journals. These early records provide invaluable, though sometimes biased, glimpses into the practice before significant cultural disruption occurred. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the traditional tools used were unlike anything in Western tattooing. Instead of needles that prick the skin, Tohunga Tā Moko used uhi, which were essentially small chisels made from bone, often albatross bone, wood, or iron, after European contact. These chisels were tapped with a mallet, literally carving grooves into the skin. The ink, made from natural pigments like soot from burnt wood or kauri gum mixed with natural substances like animal fat or plant juice, was then rubbed into the open wounds. It was an incredibly painful process, a true test of endurance and spirit. Imagine getting chiseled tattoos. Makes that buzzing needle feel like a gentle tickle, doesn't it? Historians still argue whether the earliest forms of Tā Moko in Aotearoa were primarily linear or if curvilinear forms, particularly the beautiful spirals known as koru, developed later. Was the initial migration bringing simpler patterns that blossomed into the complex artistry we recognize today, influenced by the new environment and materials? Or was the full spectrum of shapes present from the beginning, simply evolving in style and application? The debate continues, piecing together evidence from oral histories, archaeological finds, and those early European observations. The pain involved wasn't just a side effect, it was part of the ritual, a necessary component of the transformation. Enduring the pain with stoicism and courage was a demonstration of character, a rite of passage that reinforced the significance of the moko being received. It wasn't something you just sat through, it was something you went through, emerging changed, marked physically and spiritually by the experience. So, as we begin this journey, understand that Tā Moko is far more than just ink on skin. It is history, identity, spirituality, and art, all intertwined. It's a practice that connects the wearer to their ancestors, their community, and the very land itself. It's a powerful visual statement that demands respect and understanding. As we delve deeper, you'll learn to see beyond the striking patterns and begin to read the stories they tell, stories etched not just with pigment, but with courage, heritage, and deep cultural pride. It's a world away from the fleeting trends of today, a timeless art form that speaks volumes about the enduring strength and beauty of Maori culture. You've seen the striking visuals, felt the weight of its history, and maybe even winced at the thought of chisels. But where did this incredible, intense art form actually begin? Like many profound cultural practices, the origins of Tā Moko aren't found in a dusty historical ledger or an archaeological dig site alone, but woven into the very fabric of Maori mythology, in tales passed down through generations. The most widely accepted and revered origin story centers around a young chief named Māori and his journey into the underworld, a place called Rarohenga. Imagine Māori, living in the upper world, known as Te Aotearoa. He was a bit of a charmer, maybe a little arrogant, and he fell deeply in love with a beautiful woman named Nuwarika. Now, Nuwarika wasn't just any woman, she was a visitor from Rarohenga, the realm below. Māori, in his youthful exuberance, wasn't exactly perfect husband material. One day, he struck Nuwarika in a fit of anger. Heartbroken and hurt, she fled back to her home in the underworld, leaving Māori alone and full of regret. Consumed by remorse and longing, Māori decided he had to follow her, no matter the cost. He embarked on a perilous journey down to Rarohenga. This wasn't a quick trip, it was a descent into a different reality, a place where things weren't quite as they were in the upper world. When he finally arrived, looking disheveled and weary from his travels, he found himself among Nuwarika's people. Now, in Te Aotearoa, people sometimes decorated themselves with temporary paints and pigments, perhaps similar to body paint or temporary tattoos. Māori, wanting to look his best to win back Nuwarika, had adorned his face with these kinds of patterns before his journey. But the journey was rough, and the damp, misty air of Rarohenga wasn't kind to his upper-world makeup. By the time he arrived, his face was a smudged, messy disaster. The paints had run, lines blurred, and he looked, well, frankly ridiculous to the inhabitants of the underworld. It was like showing up to a formal event with marker scribbled on your face. Not a good look, especially when you're trying to impress your estranged girlfriend and her family. The people of Rarahenga, you see, practiced a different kind of facial adornment. Their patterns were not temporary paints that could smudge and wash away. They were carved deeply into the skin, permanent and perfect. This was the art of Tā Moko, in its foundational form. Nwarika's father, Wadanga, was the master Tohunga Tā Moko of Rarahenga, a skilled artist whose work was precise and enduring. When Wadanga saw Mataira's smudged, temporary face paint, he mocked him. He pointed out the fleeting nature of Mataira's decoration compared to the permanence and integrity of their own Tā Moko. This moment is crucial in the legend. It highlights the distinction between superficial adornment, tatata, which shares a root with the Polynesian word that became tattoo in English, originally referring to marking skin but sometimes used for temporary forms or less intense methods, and the deep, spiritual carving of Tā Moko, specifically the chiseled method. Watanga's art was etched into the very being, proof against the trials of the journey and the passage of time, unlike Mataira's flimsy upperworld efforts. Humbled and ashamed by his appearance, and Watanga's words, Mataora pleaded with Nwarika and her father. He apologized for his past behavior and expressed his deep regret. He also, perhaps seeing the profound beauty and permanence of their art, asked Wadanga to give him Tā Moko. Wadanga agreed, and Mataora underwent the painful, transformative process of receiving traditional Tā Moko on his face. This wasn't a quick session, it was an ordeal, mirroring the hardship of his journey. As the chisels worked and the ink was applied, Mataora not only received the physical markings but also absorbed the spiritual lessons of Rarahenga, lessons about permanence, commitment, truth, and the consequences of one's actions. The pain itself was part of the lesson, burning away his upperworld superficiality and arrogance. It was, you could say, a really intense therapy session, with chisels instead of comfortable couches. Once his Moko was complete, and his heart truly changed, Mataora was finally reconciled with Nwarika. Having learned his lesson and been marked by the sacred art of Rarahenga, he eventually returned to the upper world, taking Nwarika with him. And he didn't return empty-handed. He brought the art of Tā Moko back with him, teaching it to his people. Thus, according to the legend, Tā Moko originated in the underworld, a gift brought to humanity by Mataora and Nwarika, a permanent reminder of the lessons learned on that transformative journey. This myth isn't just a nice story, it encapsulates core Maori values regarding Tā Moko. It emphasizes its divine origin, its spiritual significance, and its permanence. It teaches that Tā Moko is not merely decoration but a profound statement of identity and transformation, something earned through hardship and commitment. The contrast between Mataira's smudged paint and Wadanga's carved Moko serves as a powerful metaphor for the difference between superficiality and deep, enduring truth. Historians still argue whether this myth reflects a historical evolution from temporary body painting to permanent carving methods, or if it is purely a symbolic narrative designed to explain the sacredness and origin of the art form. Was there a period where simpler, less permanent methods were common before the more complex, painful carving technique became dominant? Or does the story simply serve to elevate the carved Moko as the true form, distinct from any other body art? The debate continues, piecing together linguistic clues, archaeological evidence, and variations of the oral traditions. A quirky tidbit within the myth is the idea that the underworld, Rarahenga, is portrayed as the place where true art and permanence reside, at least in this context. Often, the underworld in mythologies is seen as a place of death or shadows, but here it's the source of a vibrant, enduring cultural practice. It suggests a complex spiritual geography where profound knowledge and skills exist in realms beyond the everyday upper world. It's like finding out the best art school is actually located underground. So, the next time you see Tā Moko, remember the journey of Mataora, the smudged paint, the skilled hand of Wadanga, and the enduring love and lessons that brought this sacred art from the depths of the earth to the faces of the Maori people. It's a legacy etched not just in skin, but in legend. You've heard the legend, the journey from the smudge paint upper world to the permanent art of Rarotonga. But how did that divine, underworld technique translate into the physical reality of Tā Moko and Aotearoa? Forget everything you know about modern tattoo guns and buzzing needles. The traditional practice was a world away, a process that was as much a test of spirit and endurance as it was an act of artistic creation. The tools themselves speak volumes about the intensity of the experience. The primary tool for traditional Tā Moko wasn't a needle at all, but the uhi. Think of an uhi as a small chisel. These weren't mass-produced metal tools from a factory. They were crafted by hand, often from bone, commonly albatross bone, which is dense and strong, but also sometimes human bone from ancestors or enemies, a rather intense way to carry history with you, wouldn't you agree? Wood and even greenstone, panamu, were also used. The uhi came in various shapes and sizes, each designed for a specific purpose. Some had fine, serrated edges for cutting the skin to create lines, while others had broader, flat edges for tapping the pigment into the grooves. Accompanying the uhi was the meho, a small mallet or tapping stick, typically made from wood. The Tohunga Tā Moko would hold the uhi against the skin with one hand and tap the end of it rhythmically with the meho. This wasn't a gentle process. It was literally carving into the flesh, creating deep grooves rather than just pricking the surface. This is why traditional Tā Moko has a unique, slightly raised, grooved texture when it heals, unlike the smooth surface of needle-applied tattoos. You can feel the lines and curves with your fingertips, tracing the history etched into the skin. The ink, or waingarahu, was also prepared traditionally. The primary pigment was a dark, rich black, made from the soot, ngarahu, of burnt wood, often kauri gum or matai wood, sometimes mixed with other substances like plant sap or animal fat to give it the right consistency and help it bind to the skin. For lighter colors or shading, pigments from other natural sources, like burnt vegetable caterpillars, a rather unique source, right? Or specific plants, might be used, although black was the dominant color for facial moko. This ink wasn't just sterile, pre-packaged stuff, it was organic, connected to the land and its resources. The preparation of the ink itself could be a ritualistic process. The application process was incredibly painful and demanding for both the tohunga and the recipient. It often took place in stages over several days or even weeks, depending on the complexity of the design and the person's endurance. Imagine lying still for hours while someone taps a chisel into your face, repeatedly. It makes getting a full back piece with a modern machine seem like a spa treatment. There were strict protocols surrounding the process. It was considered highly tapu, sacred and restricted. The area where the tattooing took place was tapu, the tools were tapu, the tohunga was tapu, and the person receiving the moko was tapu until the process was complete and the healing began. During the process, the person receiving the moko was often restricted in what they could eat, no solid food, only liquids through a funnel to avoid touching the face, how they could interact with others, and where they could go. They were in a liminal state, undergoing a transformation. The pain was not just endured, it was embraced as part of the journey, a test of courage and resilience. Chanting, singing, and spiritual support from family and the tohunga helped the individual through the ordeal. It was a community event in some ways, witnessing and supporting someone through a profound physical and spiritual trial. The tohunga Tā Moko needed not only immense artistic skill and anatomical knowledge, but also deep spiritual understanding and the ability to navigate the tapu restrictions. They were highly respected members of society, guardians of this sacred art form. Their hands guided the uhi, but their knowledge of genealogy, history, and symbolism guided the design itself, ensuring it was accurate and appropriate for the individual. It was a massive responsibility. A mistake wasn't easily corrected when it was carved into your face forever. Historians still argue whether the earliest forms of Tā Moko and Aotearoa primarily used bone uhi, or if stone tools played a more significant role in the initial migrations before bone became dominant due to availability and workability. Early European accounts certainly detail the use of bone chisels, but archaeological finds sometimes suggest a wider array of materials were experimented with or used in different regions or time periods. Was the shift to predominantly bone uhi a practical adaptation to the resources of Aotearoa, Or did it reflect an evolving aesthetic and technique? The debate continues, piecing together evidence from scattered sources. A quirky tidbit about the process is the method of feeding the person receiving face Moko. Because touching the face was restricted due to the open wounds and tapu status, they couldn't just pick up food. Instead, they were often fed liquids or soft food through a wooden funnel, sometimes called a carrere. Imagine trying to eat a smoothie through a funnel while your face is being chiseled. It adds another layer to the already intense experience. Even basic sustenance becomes part of the ritual restriction. The process wasn't just about making cuts and applying ink. The tohunga would apply the ink by dipping the uhi into the pigment, or rubbing the pigment into the freshly cut grooves using a folded piece of fiber or cloth. The wounds would bleed, and the ink would mix with blood and plasma. Healing was a critical phase, and proper care was essential to ensure the moko healed correctly and the patterns remained clear. The raised texture of the healed moko was the desired outcome, a testament to the carving technique. Thinking about the pain involved, it's hard not to marvel at the dedication. This wasn't a fleeting act of rebellion or a trendy fashion statement. It was a profound commitment, a willingness to endure significant suffering for the sake of identity, status, and connection to ancestry. It puts your friend complaining about their ankle tattoo pain into perspective, doesn't it? Like, oh, you think that's bad? Try getting your cheekbones hammered with a bone chisel for 6 hours. While early European observers documented the process, their accounts were often filtered through their own cultural biases and lack of understanding of the spiritual significance. Some described it as barbaric or disfiguring, failing to see the intricate artistry and the deep cultural meaning embedded in every line. These early descriptions, while valuable historical records, often miss the point. Tā Moko wasn't inflicted upon someone, it was received as an honor, a transformation, a statement of who you were. So, when you see the flowing lines and spirals of Tā Moko, remember the uhi and the meho, the steady hand of the tohunga, the intense pain, the ritual restrictions, and the deep breath taken before the first tap. It was a process that literally etched identity into the skin, a permanent mark of belonging earned through endurance and spiritual commitment. It wasn't just tattooing, it was carving, a living sculpture shaped by history and heritage. You've felt the intensity of the chisels, imagined the pain, and understood that receiving Tā Moko was a profound ordeal. But who was the person guiding that uhi, making those permanent, sacred marks? Enter the tohunga Tā Moko, the expert practitioner, the master carver of skin, the spiritual guide through the transformation. This wasn't just someone who was good with their hands. The tohunga Tā Moko held a position of immense respect and authority within Maori society. They were artists, yes, but also historians, genealogists, and spiritual leaders, all rolled into one highly tapu individual. To become a tohunga Tā Moko required years, often decades, of rigorous training. It wasn't a skill you picked up at a weekend workshop. You were typically chosen for your aptitude at a young age, perhaps showing artistic talent or a particular spiritual sensitivity. The training involved not only mastering the intricate techniques of carving and applying pigment, but also learning the vast body of knowledge that underpinned the art. This included tribal histories, genealogies, whakapapa, mythology, symbolism, and the complex rules of tapu and spiritual protocol. It was like getting a PhD in art history, surgery, and theology simultaneously, but with much sharper tools and higher stakes. The tohunga had to understand the anatomy of the face and body intimately, not just where to cut, but how deep, how the skin would heal, and how the patterns would sit on the contours of the individual's features. They needed a steady hand, incredible precision, and the physical stamina to perform detailed work for hours on end, often under demanding conditions. Imagine trying to draw a perfect spiral freehand on a surface that's moving and bleeding, while also chanting prayers and ensuring no tapu rules are broken. It required a level of focus and mastery that few possess. Beyond the technical skill, the tohunga's spiritual role was paramount. They acted as intermediaries between the physical world and the spiritual realm during the tattooing process. Tā Moko was a sacred act, a transformation that invoked ancestral spirits, and connected the wearer to their heritage in a tangible way. The tohunga facilitated this connection, performing karakia, incantations or prayers, throughout the process to ensure its success, protect everyone involved from spiritual harm, and imbue the Moko with power and meaning. They had to maintain their own state of tapu and guide the recipient through theirs. It was less like getting a tattoo and more like undergoing a sacred rite performed by a priest-artist. The design of the Moko itself was not a collaboration in the modern sense, where you bring in a Pinterest board of ideas. The design was determined by the tohunga based on the individual's wakapapa, their social status, their achievements, and other personal information. The tohunga read the individual's history and translated it into the visual language of Tā Moko. This is a mainstream historical fact. Tohunga Tā Moko were the custodians of this visual language, ensuring that the Moko accurately reflected the wearer's identity and status within their community. They were the living encyclopedias of tribal history and personal lineage, inscribed onto the skin. This put immense pressure on the tohunga. A single mistake in the design could misrepresent a person's lineage or status, causing significant social and spiritual repercussions. There was no easy way to fix a wrongly placed line or a misinterpreted symbol when it was carved into someone's face. It required absolute accuracy, not just artistic flair. It was probably the highest pressure job imaginable, where your canvas was a living, high-status person's face, and your eraser didn't exist. Because the process was so tapu, the tohunga themselves lived under strict rules. They might have specific dietary restrictions, limitations on who they could touch, and rituals they had to perform before and after a tattooing session. Their tools, the uhi and meho, were also highly tapu and were often kept in specially designated places. This separation and adherence to tapu reinforced their spiritual authority and the sacredness of their craft. Historians still argue whether the training to become a tohunga Tā Moko was strictly hereditary, passed down only within certain families, or if talent and spiritual calling could lead to apprenticeship regardless of lineage. While many famous tohunga came from lines of practitioners, evidence suggests that individuals demonstrating exceptional skill and spiritual aptitude could also be taken on as apprentices, ensuring the continuation of the art beyond strict bloodlines. This debate highlights the complexity of knowledge transmission in traditional Māori society. Was it primarily through inherited right, or earned merit? A quirky tidbit about the tohunga's practice relates to the care of their tools. Because the uhi chisels were so vital and tapu, they were often treated with great reverence. Some tohunga were said to have personal names for their favorite tools, or to perform specific rituals before using them. The bone uhi, particularly those made from ancestral bone, carried their own significance and history, making the tools themselves participants in the ritual, not just inert objects. Imagine naming your favorite pen or paintbrush and treating it like a sacred artifact. A bit much for your everyday stationery, but for these tools of transformation, it made sense. The responsibility of the tohunga extended beyond the tattooing session itself. They often oversaw the healing process, providing guidance on how to care for the Moko and maintaining the tapu restrictions until the wounds had closed. Their connection to the person receiving the Moko didn't end when the last tap of the mallet sounded. It continued until the transformation was complete and the Moko had settled into its permanent form. In essence, the tohunga Tā Moko was far more than an artist in the Western sense. They were the keepers of a sacred tradition, weaving together history, identity, and spirituality through the physical act of carving skin. Their mastery wasn't just technical. It was a profound understanding of the individual, their place in the world, and their connection to the divine and ancestral realms. They were the living bridge between the past and the present, the spiritual and the physical, etching stories that would last a lifetime and beyond. Without the tohunga's knowledge, skill, and spiritual authority, Tā Moko as it was traditionally practiced simply wouldn't have existed. They were the heart and soul of the art form. You've met the tohunga, the master artist and spiritual guide, who held the tools of transformation. Now turn your gaze to the person in the tohunga's care, the individual undergoing the intense, life-altering process of receiving Tā Moko. This wasn't a casual appointment you booked online. It was a profound physical and spiritual journey, a test of endurance that etched identity not just onto the skin, but into the very soul. Imagine yourself in that moment. You are lying or sitting in a designated tapu space. The air might be thick with the scent of wood smoke from the ink preparation, or the earthy smell of the natural pigments. There's a palpable sense of solemnity, of something significant about to happen. Your face, the most visible part of your being, is about to become a canvas, yes, but a canvas that is carved, not just painted. The tohunga begins, perhaps outlining the main patterns with a piece of charcoal, or a light score. Then comes the uhi, the bone chisel, held steady against your skin. You hear the soft, rhythmic tap-tap-tap of the meho, the mallet, against the uhi. This isn't the familiar buzz of a modern tattoo machine. It's a dull thud, a sharp sting, a deep, cutting sensation as the chisel breaks the surface and carves a groove into your flesh. Line by line, curve by curve, the patterns begin to emerge, not just on your skin, but in your skin. The pain is immense. It's not a constant, vibrating ache, but a series of sharp, deliberate insults to the nerve endings. Each tap is a jolt, a reminder of the commitment you are making. Your body instinctively wants to flinch, to pull away from the source of the agony. But you must remain still. Moving could ruin the intricate design, disrespect the tohunga, and undermine the entire sacred process. This stillness in the face of extreme pain was a crucial part of the ritual, a demonstration of your courage, discipline, and readiness to bear the weight of the moko's meaning. It's like holding a plank pose while someone uses a tiny ice pick on your face. Definitely not for the faint of heart. This process could take many hours, spread over days or even weeks, with periods of rest and healing in between. The complexity of the moko dictated the duration. A full facial moko, a moko kanohi, could be an incredibly lengthy ordeal. Historically, a full facial moko was a mark of high status and was typically reserved for chiefs and warriors, requiring not only immense pain tolerance but also the social standing to justify such an extensive and meaningful undertaking. This is a mainstream historical fact. The extent of your moko was intrinsically linked to your position in society. During the most intense parts of the process, the recipient might be supported by family members, who would sit nearby, offering encouragement through song, chant, or simply their presence. The tohunga might also perform karakia, incantations, to guide the process, protect the individual, and maintain the sacredness of the space. The air might fill with the low hum of chanting, a rhythmic counterpoint to the tapping of the mallet, helping to create a trance-like state that allowed the individual to endure the pain and connect with the spiritual dimension of the ritual. It wasn't just physical pain management, it was spiritual fortification. The endurance required went beyond just lying still. As mentioned before, the recipient was under strict tapu restrictions. They couldn't touch their own face, which was especially difficult with open wounds. They were often fed liquids through a funnel. They might be isolated from others during the healing process to maintain the tapu status of the moko and the area. This period of restriction and healing was as much a part of the transformation as the tattooing itself. It was a time for reflection, for integrating the physical experience with the spiritual significance of the markings. The pain wasn't just a byproduct of the technique. It was an intrinsic part of the ritual and its meaning. It was a rite of passage, a test that proved an individual's strength, resilience, and worthiness to wear the moko. Enduring the pain with stoicism demonstrated character and reinforced the significance of the identity and status being etched onto their face. It was a physical manifestation of the hardships and challenges faced in life, overcome and marked permanently. It's the ultimate. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger scenario, except in this case, it might feel like it's actively trying to kill you. Historians still argue whether the intense pain was solely a spiritual rite of passage intended to test character, or if it also served a practical purpose, such as ensuring the recipient remained absolutely still during the delicate carving process, or perhaps even promoting a specific type of healing that resulted in the desired raised texture. Was the pain the point, or a necessary side effect of a technique chosen for other reasons? The debate continues, considering both the symbolic explanations within oral traditions and the practical realities of the carving method. A quirky tidbit about the process is the careful management of the blood and other bodily fluids produced during the carving. Because the process was so tapu, everything that came from the body during the tattooing was also considered tapu. The blood and plasma from the wounds were carefully collected, often on pieces of flax or cloth, and then disposed of according to strict ritual protocols, frequently by burying them in a sacred spot. This wasn't just for hygiene. It was about managing the spiritual potency and tapu of the bodily substances involved in this transformative ritual. As the moko healed, the grooves would remain, creating that unique, textured surface. This wasn't just a flat image on the skin. It was a part of the skin itself, integrated into the contours of the face. The healed moko was a permanent testament to the individual's journey, their connection to their ancestors, their status, and their ability to endure hardship. It was a visual biography, yes, but also a physical record of a profound personal trial. Receiving Tā Moko, particularly a full facial moko, was one of the most significant events in a person's life. It marked a transition, often from youth to adulthood, or from a lower rank to a position of greater responsibility and status. It was a public declaration of identity and belonging, a statement that you were ready to step into your role within the community, bearing the weight of your heritage on your face. It wasn't just about looking the part. It was about embodying it, having literally carved your commitment into your being. So, when you imagine Tā Moko, don't just see the beautiful patterns. Feel the tap of the mallet, the sting of the chisel, the deep breath taken to stay still, the support of the community, the weight of the spiritual significance. It was a journey of pain, endurance, and transformation, a ritual that turned skin into a sacred text, a map of a life lived and a heritage claimed. It was the ultimate commitment, etched in flesh and spirit forever. You've endured the tapping, felt the sting of the uhi, and emerged from the tapu space, marked forever. But what exactly do those intricate lines and spirals mean? The face, your face, wasn't just the site of the most intense Tā Moko. It was the most significant canvas, considered the ultimate expression of identity. It was, quite literally, a map of who you were, where you came from, and your journey through life. Understanding Tā Moko on the face, or moko kanohi, means learning to read this map, decoding the language etched into the skin. Imagine your face divided into specific zones, each with its own general significance. While the specific patterns within these zones told a detailed story, the areas themselves broadly represented different aspects of your identity and status. It's like looking at a country map. The border shows you which country you're in, but the lines inside show the roads, rivers, and cities. Your face was your country, and the moko the intricate geography within it. Let's start at the top, on your forehead, known as the Ngakapikitanga. This area was primarily associated with your rank and status. The patterns here often spoke of your position within the tribe, your authority, and your standing in the community. The higher your rank, the more elaborate the moko might be on your forehead. It was like wearing your title on your brow, a constant visual reminder to others of your place in the social hierarchy. Think of it as the ultimate LinkedIn profile header, permanently displayed for everyone you meet. Moving down, the area around your temples, called the raua, also related to your status and rank. The lines here often flowed from the forehead patterns, extending the narrative of your social position and importance. These areas together, the forehead and temples, laid the foundation for your visible identity, announcing your place in the world before you even spoke a word. Now look at your cheeks, the manaya. This area was incredibly significant, and often featured prominent spirals known as koru. The patterns on the cheeks frequently represented your ancestral spirits, your manaya. These were like guardian figures, symbolic representations of your lineage and the spiritual protection that came from your ancestors. Having intricate moko here meant you were literally carrying your ancestral guardians on your face, a powerful connection to those who came before you. It's a bit more meaningful than having a guardian angel tattooed on your shoulder, isn't it? The bridge of your nose, the pongi, was another crucial area. This central line often represented your primary lineage, the connection to your most important ancestral line. It was the backbone of your identity, the straight path linking you directly to your forebears. The patterns here could be simple or complex, but they always spoke of your roots, the very foundation of your being. Around your eyes, the tatisha, the patterns could signify various things, including status and achievements. The areas around the eyes are sensitive and expressive, and the Moko here could highlight your watchfulness, your wisdom, or battles you had fought and won, literal or metaphorical. It was like framing the windows to your soul with the story of your accomplishments. Your jawline, the perwa, and the area below, down to the chin, were often covered in intricate patterns that spoke of your status, your position, and your achievements, particularly for men. The strength of your jaw, mirrored by the strength of the Moko there, could represent your power and authority. For warriors, patterns here might relate to their prowess in battle. It was a declaration of your personal power and your contribution to the community, etched into the very structure of your face. And then there is the chin, the Moko kawi. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Moko kawi, the chin tattoo, was traditionally worn only by women. It was a profound statement of female identity, lineage, and status. While men's Moko kanohi covered the entire face, women's Moko was typically focused on the chin and lips, though they sometimes also had Moko on the forehead or cheeks. The Moko kawi was often received during puberty, or as a young woman came of age, signifying her readiness for marriage and her place within her family and iwi tribe. It connected her directly to her female ancestors, a visual representation of her whakapapa and her inherent mana as a Māori woman. It's a powerful symbol of cultural pride and identity that has seen a remarkable revival in recent times. The lips were also sometimes tattooed, particularly the upper lip for women, asterisk and good to asterisk, as part of the Moko kawi, and sometimes the lower lip for men. Tattooed lips were considered beautiful and a sign of status. Imagine having naturally dark, defined lips from your Moko, no need for lipstick. Historians still argue whether the specific meanings assigned to each facial zone were universally consistent across all iwi tribes, or if there were significant regional variations in the interpretation and placement of patterns. While broad themes like status and lineage were common, did the specific symbolism of a particular spiral or line always mean the same thing whether you were from the North Island or the South Island? The debate considers the influence of local dialects, specific tribal histories, and the autonomy of individual Tohunga Tā Moko in developing their own visual lexicon within the broader framework. A quirky tidbit about the facial mapping is the belief that the left side of the face often represented the male side of your lineage, your father's line, while the right side represented the female side, your mother's line. A full facial Moko would beautifully balance and integrate both sides of your whakapapa, showing the complete tapestry of your ancestry woven together on your face. It's a fascinating concept, that your physical features could literally map out your parental heritage side by side. The combination of these facial zones, filled with specific patterns and symbols, created a unique and complex visual biography for each individual. No two Moko kanohi were exactly alike, just as no two lives or genealogies are exactly alike. The Tohunga Tā Moko was the expert reader and writer of this visual language, ensuring that the Moko accurately reflected the wearer's identity and place in the world. So, when you look at a face adorned with Tā Moko, you are not just seeing a pattern, you are reading a story. You are seeing rank on the forehead, ancestral guardians on the cheeks, lineage on the nose, achievements around the eyes, status on the jaw, and for women, powerful identity on the chin. It's a living document, a face that speaks volumes about history, heritage, and the intricate tapestry of a person's life woven into the very skin they inhabit. It's a level of personal transparency that makes wearing a name tag seem incredibly low effort. You've learned that your face, marked with Tā Moko, is a map, divided into zones that broadly signify different aspects of your being: status on your forehead, lineage on your nose, ancestral connection on your cheeks. But just like knowing a country exists isn't the same as navigating its roads and cities, truly reading a Moko means delving into the intricate language of the patterns themselves. The lines, the curves, the spirals, the repeated motifs, these aren't just decorative elements. They are the vocabulary and grammar of a visual language that tells your story, etched onto your skin. Imagine these patterns as individual characters or words, combining to form sentences and paragraphs about your life. Every single line, whether it's a bold, straight stroke or a delicate, flowing spiral, holds meaning. The direction of a line, its thickness, its placement relative to other lines, and the way it connects to different parts of the face. All of this contributes to the narrative. It's a level of detail that makes trying to read your morning newspaper feel like kindergarten. The most iconic pattern in Tā Moko, and indeed in much of Maori art, is the koru. You've seen it, that beautiful, unfurling spiral shape. It's instantly recognizable and deeply symbolic. The koru represents new life, growth, strength, peace, and harmony. It's inspired by the shape of a young, unfurling fern frond, reaching towards the light. When you see koru patterns on a face, particularly on the cheeks within the man-eye area, they often symbolize ancestral connection and the continuation of lineage. They represent the life force flowing through generations, the potential for growth and renewal embodied by the wearer. It's like wearing a permanent reminder that you're a work in progress, constantly growing, but deeply rooted. Other common motifs include straight lines, known as pakari, which can symbolize strength, resilience, and sometimes rank or status, particularly when arranged in repetitive patterns. Curved lines, or ononahi, resembling fish scales, can represent abundance, health, and the connection to the ocean, a vital source of sustenance and identity for many Maori. Zigzag patterns, tawana, might symbolize swiftness or movement. Each type of line and curve had specific names and connotations, adding layers of meaning to the overall design. The arrangement and combination of these patterns were crucial. A tohunga Tā Moko didn't just pick patterns at random, they wove them together to create a cohesive narrative unique to the individual. The density of the patterns, the way they flowed across the face, and the specific motifs used all conveyed information about the wearer's wakapapa, genealogy, their iwi, tribe, and hapu, subtribe, affiliations, their social standing, and their personal achievements. Were they a great warrior? A skilled orator? A respected leader? The Moko would tell the story. It was like having your CV permanently displayed on your face, but way cooler and much harder to update. For men, patterns on the jaw and chin might specifically detail their warrior status, the battles they had fought, or their leadership roles in conflict. Patterns around the eyes could signify their alertness and watchfulness, important traits for a leader or warrior. For women, while the Moko kaui on the chin was paramount, the specific patterns within it would detail her lineage, her connection to her female ancestors, and her status within her family and community. The Ngutu, the patterns on the lips, further enhanced this expression of female identity and beauty. A mainstream historical fact is that the specific patterns and their placement were so precise and universally understood within the Maori world that a Moko could function as a form of identification. In times of conflict or travel, an individual's Moko could immediately communicate their tribal affiliation, their rank, and their status, allowing others to know who they were and how they should be treated. It was the original biometric passport, etched into your face, impossible to lose, though probably quite uncomfortable going through airport security. Historians still argue whether there was a single, overarching, pan-Maori system of pattern meaning, or if the specific interpretations of certain motifs varied significantly between different iwi, and even between individual tohunga Tā Moko. While fundamental concepts like koru representing growth were widespread, did a particular arrangement of lines on the jaw mean exactly the same thing in Taranaki as it did in Northland? The debate considers the influence of regional dialects, distinct tribal histories, and the potential for tohunga to develop their own signatures within the broader visual language, making Moko reading something that required local knowledge. A quirky tidbit about the patterns is the concept of pihoro, complex swirling patterns often seen on the thighs and buttocks. We'll get to body Moko later, don't worry, but which also influenced facial Moko design. These patterns, resembling swirling water or wind, symbolize speed, agility, and movement. Their inclusion or adaptation in facial Moko could signify a person's quick wit, their ability to move swiftly in battle or argument, or their connection to elements like wind and water. It's another example of how the patterns drew inspiration from the natural world and translated those qualities into human attributes. The complexity of a Moko reflected the complexity of the individual's story and status. A chief or a person of high rank would typically have a much more extensive and intricate Moko than someone of lower status. The patterns themselves might be denser, covering more of the face, and incorporating a wider variety of motifs. It wasn't just about having a tattoo. It was about having a biography carved onto your face, and if you had a really long, interesting biography, you needed a lot of skin space. Learning to read a Moko would have been a skill acquired over time, understanding the subtle nuances of the lines and the cultural context behind them. It wasn't something you could just glance at. It required focused attention, a deep understanding of Wakapapa, and knowledge of tribal histories. It was like reading a complex historical document, but instead of parchment, it was on a person's cheek. So, when you look at the face adorned with Tā Moko, move beyond seeing just patterns. See the vocabulary of the Koru, speaking of growth and ancestry. See the straight lines, representing strength and status. See the curves, reflecting connection to the natural world. See how these elements combine to tell a story of lineage, achievement, and identity, a complex, beautiful language written in ink and skin, a testament to a life lived and a heritage embraced. It's a visual symphony, played out on the most personal of canvases. You've begun to decipher the visual language of Tā Moko, understanding that the Koru speaks of growth and ancestry, the straight lines of strength, and the curves of connection. But woven within these patterns, and perhaps the most crucial information conveyed by a Moko Kanohi, is the story of your Wakapapa, your genealogy, your lineage, your ancestral connections. Your face, quite literally, became a living family tree, a permanent record of who you were and where you fit into the vast tapestry of Maori society. Imagine meeting someone and, by simply looking at their face, you could trace their ancestry back generations. You could see which iwi, tribe, and hapu, subtribe, they belonged to, which prominent ancestors they descended from, and their precise standing within that complex web of relationships. This wasn't just a matter of curiosity. In traditional Maori society, Wakapapa was paramount. It determined your identity, your rights to land and resources, your responsibilities, and your social standing. Tā Moko translated this vital information into a visual form that was unmistakable and undeniable. The patterns on specific areas of the face, like the bridge of the nose, *pondi*, and the cheeks, *mana*, were particularly important for conveying Wakapapa. The central line on the nose often represented the primary ancestral line, the main trunk of the family tree. The patterns branching out from this, flowing across the cheeks and temples, represented the various branches of the lineage, connecting the individual to specific ancestors and subtribes. A skilled Tohunga Tā Moko could, through the intricate arrangement of these lines and shapes, depict complex genealogical information, making the face a mnemonic device, a visual aid for remembering and reciting Wakapapa, which was often a lengthy and detailed oral tradition. It's like having a cheat sheet for your family reunion glued to your face. Beyond just lineage, Tā Moko also clearly communicated social status and rank. As we touched on earlier, the extent and complexity of a man's Moko Kanohi were direct indicators of his standing. Chiefs and high-ranking individuals wore full facial Moko, often incredibly detailed and covering the entire face from forehead to chin. Men of lower status might have less extensive Moko, perhaps only on certain parts of the face, or no Moko at all. To be a high-ranking man without Moko was almost unthinkable. It would imply a lack of courage, a failure to endure the pain required, or a deliberate rejection of one's heritage and responsibilities. It was a visible sign of your place in the hierarchy, like wearing epaulets on your shoulders, but permanently carved into your bones. This link between Moko and status is a mainstream historical fact, widely documented by early European observers. They noted that the most elaborately tattooed individuals were invariably the chiefs and leaders. The patterns themselves could also signify specific achievements that contributed to one's status, such as prowess in battle, success in diplomacy, or contributions to the welfare of the community. A warrior might have patterns on his jaw or around his eyes that spoke of his victories. A leader might have symbols on his forehead representing his authority. The Moko was a dynamic record, potentially added to over time as the individual achieved new milestones, although a full facial Moko was often completed in stages during adolescence and early adulthood. For women, the Moko kawi on the chin served a similar function in denoting identity and lineage, specifically connecting them to their female ancestors. While the Moko kawi was a statement of inherent female identity and mana, the specific patterns within it would still reflect her wakapapa and her status within her family and hapu. It was a powerful visual affirmation of her place in the world as a Maori woman, connected to a long line of strong female forebears. The personal history aspect of Tā Moko is also fascinating. While wakapapa and status formed the foundation of the design, elements could be incorporated that reflected an individual's life journey, their experiences, and even aspects of their personality. A unique event, a personal triumph, or a significant challenge overcome could potentially be symbolized within the broader framework of the Moko. It made each Moko truly unique, a personal narrative woven into the ancestral history. It was your personal diary, written in code on your face, for those who could read it. Historians still argue whether the degree to which personal achievements and individual life events were incorporated into Tā Moko designs varied significantly between tribes or time periods. While wakapapa and status were universally core elements, was there flexibility for personal expression within the traditional framework, or were the designs almost entirely dictated by inherited factors? The debate considers how much agency the individual or the tohunga had in adding personal narratives to the Moko, alongside the established genealogical and status-based patterns. A quirky tidbit related to the personal history aspect is the potential for Moko to reflect not just positive achievements, but also significant personal trials or losses. Some accounts suggest that patterns could symbolize periods of mourning, significant injuries sustained, or even acts of revenge. While not as commonly documented as symbols of status or lineage, this hints at the Moko's capacity to be a comprehensive record of a life's journey, including its darker moments. It makes you wonder if anyone ever got a pattern for survived that really awkward family dinner. Probably not, but it's a thought. The permanence of Tā Moko reinforced the enduring nature of identity and heritage. Once etched onto the skin, it was a lifelong declaration of who you were. It wasn't something you could change or hide. This permanence instilled a deep sense of responsibility in the wearer, to live up to the mana and status represented by their Moko, to honor their ancestors, and to carry their heritage with pride. It's a level of commitment to your identity that makes getting your name tattooed on your lower back feel incredibly non-committal. The act of receiving the Moko, with its intense pain and tapu restrictions, further solidified this connection to identity and heritage. Enduring the ordeal was a physical and spiritual affirmation of the wearer's commitment to their culture and their place within it. The pain itself became part of the story, a testament to the courage and resilience required to embody one's identity so fully and publicly. In essence, Tā Moko was the ultimate form of identification and self-declaration in traditional Maori society. It wasn't just a mark on you, it was a mark of you, a detailed, public, and permanent record of your wakapapa, your status, your achievements, and your journey through life. It was a powerful visual language that connected you indelibly to your past, grounded you firmly in your present, and offered a glimpse into the legacy you would carry forward. It was identity made visible, etched in skin and soul. You've delved into the intricate language of the patterns, seen how the koru and the straight lines weave a narrative of wakapapa, status, and personal history. You understand that looking at a face with traditional Tā Moko is like reading a book written in skin. But here's where we need to make a crucial distinction, a point that sometimes gets blurred in the modern world of body art. Tā Moko, in its traditional form, was fundamentally different from what most of the world understands as tattooing. It wasn't just a tattoo, it was Tā Moko. Think about the tattoos you see every day. They might be beautiful, meaningful to the wearer, a form of self-expression, a memorial, a piece of art they admire. They are applied with electric needles that rapidly puncture the skin, depositing ink. The process, while often painful, is typically a single session or a few sessions, relatively quick compared to traditional methods. The artist is skilled, perhaps famous, but their role is primarily technical and artistic. The motivations for getting a tattoo are vast and personal, ranging from deep symbolism to drunken impulse decisions. Remember that regrettable tramp stamp from Section 1? Exactly. Now, contrast that with Tā Moko. First, the technique itself was fundamentally different. Remember the uhi and meho? The chisels and the mallet? This wasn't about pricking the skin, it was about carving grooves into it. This physical difference results in that unique, raised texture of traditional Tā Moko, a tactile quality that sets it apart from the smooth surface of needle-applied tattoos. It was literally sculpted into the flesh, not just drawn upon it. This carving method, while incredibly painful, wasn't just a preference. It was the defining characteristic of the art form, creating a lasting, physical scar that held the pigment. It's like the difference between painting a picture and carving a sculpture. Both are art, but the process and the result are distinct. Then there's the purpose and meaning. While modern tattoos can carry deep personal meaning, traditional Tā Moko was intrinsically linked to identity in a way that went beyond personal choice. It was a public declaration of your whakapapa, your social status, your tribal affiliations, and your life achievements. It wasn't something you got because you thought it looked cool, though it is incredibly cool. It was something you earned, something that reflected who you were within your community and in relation to your ancestors. It was less about individual self-expression, in the Western sense of uniqueness for uniqueness' sake, and more about expressing your place within the collective identity. It was the visual affirmation of your belonging, your history, and your responsibilities. Imagine getting a tattoo that literally proves your citizenship and social security number. That's closer to the function of Tā Moko than getting a sleeve of cool dragons. The role of the Tohunga Tā Moko also highlights this distinction. They weren't just tattoo artists, they were spiritual experts, historians, and guardians of cultural knowledge. They didn't just apply ink, they facilitated a sacred transformation. The process was steeped in tapu, surrounded by ritual and protocol. The Tohunga's spiritual authority and knowledge of whakapapa were as crucial as their artistic skill. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Tohunga Tā Moko held a highly respected and sacred position, far exceeding that of a modern tattoo artist, no matter how skilled. The permanence of Tā Moko wasn't just a practical reality, no laser removal back then. It was symbolic of the enduring nature of the identity it represented. You couldn't change your whakapapa, you couldn't erase your history, and your moko reflected that immutable truth. It was a lifelong commitment, a visible contract with your ancestors and your community. Modern tattoos, while often permanent, don't carry that same inherent cultural weight of representing an unchangeable, collective identity. You can get a cover-up, you can get it removed, painfully and expensively, but with traditional Tā Moko, that simply wasn't an option, reinforcing the gravity of the decision and the permanence of the identity it represented. It made the decision process slightly more involved than scrolling through Instagram for inspiration. Historians still argue whether the term tattoo, derived from the Polynesian word tata, is truly appropriate for describing Tā Moko, given the fundamental differences in technique, carving versus pricking, purpose, identity/status versus broader decoration, and spiritual significance. While both involve marking the skin with pigment, the cultural context and physical process are so distinct that some scholars prefer to use Tā Moko as its own unique category of body art, separate from Western tattooing traditions. A quirky tidbit that emphasizes the difference is the use of different terms. While tata is a pan-Polynesian term for marking the skin, the Māori developed the specific term, Tā Moko, to refer to their unique carved facial art. This linguistic distinction itself suggests they saw it as something distinct from other forms of skin marking, including potentially simpler, earlier forms of tattooing that might have existed or been known to them. It's like calling a fine oil painting and a sidewalk chalk drawing both pictures, technically true, but missing some crucial nuances. The pain and endurance required for Tā Moko also set it apart. While getting a large modern tattoo is painful, the process of being repeatedly struck with a chisel to carve deep grooves is on another level entirely. This wasn't just enduring pain for art, it was enduring pain as a spiritual test, a rite of passage that earned you the right to wear the moko. It was a physical manifestation of your inner strength and resilience, qualities essential for someone bearing the weight of their lineage and status. Your pain tolerance was literally written all over your face. In essence, While both involve pigment on skin, comparing traditional Tā Moko to modern Western tattooing is like comparing a sacred tribal ceremony to getting a bumper sticker. One is deeply embedded in a complex cultural system of identity, spirituality, and social structure, performed with specific sacred tools and rituals by highly trained cultural experts. The other is a form of personal adornment or artistic expression, performed with modern tools by skilled artists, with meaning that is primarily personal to the wearer. Tā Moko wasn't just body art. It was a living, breathing testament to a cultural identity, carved into the very fabric of a person's being. It was a statement that resonated through generations, a connection to the past and a declaration for the future, far more than just ink deep. You've grasped that Tā Moko wasn't just skin deep, that it was a profound declaration of identity, history, and status, carved into the flesh with chisels and imbued with spiritual significance. And while the full facial Moko Kanohi for men is perhaps the most widely recognized form, it's crucial to understand that this powerful art form was not exclusive to men. Maori women also bore the indelible marks of Tā Moko, particularly on their faces, in a practice equally rich in meaning, beauty, and cultural weight. For women, the most significant and universally recognized facial Moko was the Moko Kaui, the sacred chin tattoo. Imagine a woman whose chin is adorned with intricate, flowing patterns that frame her mouth and extend down towards her neck. These aren't just pretty designs, they are a visual testament to her wakapapa, her connection to her female ancestors, and her inherent mana, spiritual power or authority, as a Maori woman. While men's Moko Kanohi often covered the entire face, mapping out their lineage, status, and achievements across multiple zones, women's Moko was traditionally focused on the chin and lips, and gut, sometimes extending to smaller patterns on the forehead or cheeks, depending on status and tribal tradition. But the Moko Kaui was paramount. It was a mark of maturity, identity, and belonging, a declaration of who she was and the esteemed lineage she carried. Receiving the Moko Kaui was as significant and tapu a process for a woman as receiving a full Moko Kanohi was for a man. It was often undertaken during puberty, or as a young woman came of age, marking her transition into womanhood and her readiness for marriage and the responsibilities that came with it. The process involved the same painful carving technique using the uhi and meho, the same adherence to tapu restrictions, and the guidance of a tohunga Tā Moko. While historical accounts sometimes suggest the process for women might have been less extensive than a full male Moko Kanohi, requiring fewer sessions, the pain and spiritual significance were no less profound. Enduring the pain with grace and stoicism was a testament to a young woman's strength and character, qualities highly valued in Maori society. It was her own version of the "you probably wouldn't survive this" club, proving her resilience for all to see. The patterns within the Moko Kaui were deeply personal yet universally understood within the cultural context. They detailed the woman's wakapapa, specifically linking her to her maternal line, celebrating the strength and history of her female ancestors. The lines and curves would weave together the names and stories of her foremothers, creating a permanent connection to the generations that came before her. It was like wearing a lineage chart that specifically highlighted the powerful women in your family tree. The ngutu, the patterns on the lips, were often part of the Moko Kaui design, enhancing the beauty and significance of the mouth, which was considered a tapu part of the body, particularly as the organ of speech and breath. Tattooed lips were seen as a mark of beauty and status. A mainstream historical fact is that the Moko Kaui was universally recognized across Maori iwi tribes as the quintessential female Moko. While other forms of female Moko existed, the chin tattoo was the most common and culturally significant, a visible identifier of a Maori woman and her connection to her heritage. Early European explorers and missionaries frequently documented the striking appearance of Maori women with their Moko Kaui, noting its prevalence and beauty, though often failing to grasp its deeper cultural meaning. For Maori women, wearing the Moko Kaui was not just about identity, it was about asserting their mana. Women held significant positions within Maori society, owning land, participating in discussions, and wielding influence. The Moko Kaui was a visible affirmation of their inherent worth and status, a sign that they were women of rank and substance, deeply connected to their ancestry and their community. It was a mark of beauty, yes, but a beauty rooted in strength, heritage, and cultural pride. It was the ultimate power accessory, carved into your face. Historians still argue whether the practice of moko kawi was as widespread among women of all social strata as male moko kanohi was for men of high rank, or if it was also primarily associated with women of higher status. While most historical accounts focus on women of chieftain lineage wearing elaborate moko kawi, archaeological evidence and later accounts suggest that some form of chin moko might have been more broadly practiced, perhaps with variations in complexity depending on status. The debate considers how universal the practice truly was before European disruption. A quirky tidbit related to the moko kawi is its association with the concept of wahangangana, which roughly translates to a glowing mouth, or mouth of fire. This wasn't just about physical appearance. It referred to the power of a woman's voice, her ability to speak with authority, eloquence, and conviction. The moko kawi was seen as enhancing this power, making her words even more potent and respected. It was a literal way of saying, "Listen up, because what comes out of this mouth is important." Beyond the chin and lips, some Maori women also had moko on other parts of their face, such as small patterns on the forehead, *ngakapikatanga*, or cheeks, *manai*, which could also signify lineage or status, though these were less common than the moko kawi. Body moko was also practiced by women, often on the thighs, buttocks, and breasts, carrying different meanings related to fertility, lineage, and personal identity, a topic we'll delve into more later. The moko kawi has become a particularly potent symbol in the modern revival of Tā Moko. For many contemporary Maori women, choosing to receive their moko kawi is a powerful act of cultural reclamation, a visible assertion of their identity and connection to their ancestors in the face of historical suppression. It is a way of honoring their heritage, celebrating their womanhood, and continuing a tradition that was nearly lost. Seeing a young woman proudly wearing her moko kawi today is witnessing a direct link to the past, a living testament to the resilience and strength of Maori culture and the mana of Maori women. It's not a fashion statement, it's a statement of existence, loud and clear. The beauty of the moko kawi was deeply appreciated within traditional Maori society, seen as enhancing a woman's features and signifying her maturity, status, and connection to her ancestry. This contrasts sharply with the initial reactions of many European observers, who often viewed Tā Moko, including moko kawi, through a lens of cultural prejudice, describing it as barbaric or disfiguring. This highlights the vast difference in aesthetic values and cultural understanding. What one society saw as profound beauty and meaning, another dismissed out of hand. In essence, the moko kawi was and is far more than just a tattoo on a woman's chin. It is a sacred marker of identity, a link to generations of female ancestors, a sign of maturity and status, and a beautiful affirmation of Maori womanhood and mana. It is a tradition that speaks volumes about the respect and significance accorded to women within Maori society, etched onto the most visible part of their being for all time. It is a powerful story written on the skin, a testament to heritage, resilience, and enduring beauty. You've explored the incredible world etched onto the face, understanding how moko kanohi and moko kawi transform skin into a map of identity, lineage, and status. But the canvas of Tā Moko wasn't limited to the head alone. While the face held paramount importance as the seat of identity and mana, traditional Maori also adorned other parts of their bodies with intricate carvings, each carrying its own layers of meaning and significance. The story of Tā Moko extends beyond the forehead, cheeks, and chin, flowing down across the shoulders, torso, arms, and legs. Imagine the body as an extended scroll, waiting to be inscribed with the narratives of a life. While not as universally practiced or as crucial for immediate identification as facial moko, body moko, known collectively as tauhi, carved skin, played a vital role in expressing identity, status, and connection to the spiritual world. These patterns, applied with the same uhi chisels and meho mallet, created that familiar groove texture, turning the skin into a living sculpture across the entire physique. It's like having a full-body graphic novel, except instead of pages, it's your epidermis, and instead of ink on paper, it's ink carved into flesh. For men, the most common and elaborate areas for body moko were the thighs, *puhoro*, and the buttocks, *rape*. The puhoro patterns, covering the thighs from hip to knee, were often incredibly complex and flowing, featuring swirling motifs and intricate designs. These patterns frequently mirrored or complemented the facial moko, extending the genealogical narrative down the body. They could represent lineage, tribal affiliations, and personal achievements, particularly those related to physical prowess, speed, or agility, qualities essential for warriors and hunters. Getting your entire thigh chiseled sounds like a particularly intense form of leg day, doesn't it? The rape, or moko on the buttocks, was also significant for men. While perhaps less visible in everyday wear than thigh moko, these patterns were displayed during specific ceremonies, dances, or when wearing traditional garments that exposed the lower body. Like puhoro, they were linked to lineage and status, adding another dimension to the individual's visual biography. Some accounts suggest these patterns could also relate to fertility or virility. Imagine needing to moon someone just to prove your family tree was legit. Other areas for men's body moko included the back, chest, arms, and shoulders. Moko on the chest, *tangako*, meaning to carve the heart, could relate to personal courage, emotional experiences, or connection to important events. Patterns on the arms and shoulders might signify strength, skill with weapons, or specific achievements in battle or hunting. The back could serve as a large canvas for complex designs that reinforce tribal identity or detailed extensive genealogical lines. While facial moko was the primary identifier of status, extensive body moko further solidified a man's position and communicated the depth of his heritage and accomplishments. It was like having your full resume printed on your skin, front and back. For women, body moko was less universally practiced than the moko kaui, but did occur. Common areas included the thighs, buttocks, and sometimes the breasts, *u*. Like men's body moko, these patterns were often related to lineage and identity. For women, thigh and buttock moko might also carry meanings associated with fertility, childbirth, and the continuation of the family line. Moko on the breasts could similarly be linked to motherhood and nurturing. While the moko kaui was a public declaration of identity and mana, female body moko might have been more private or revealed in specific contexts. A mainstream historical fact is that while facial moko was considered paramount, extensive body moko, particularly the puhoro and rape for men, was also a significant mark of high status and mana. Warriors and chiefs often possessed the most complete and intricate body moko, complementing their facial designs and presenting a formidable and visually striking appearance, a testament to their lineage, achievements, and the pain they had endured. The process of receiving body moko involved the same pain, tapu restrictions, and spiritual guidance from the Tohunga Tā Moko as facial moko. While the body might be less nerve-sensitive than the face in some areas, the sheer scale of some body moko, covering large areas like the entire thighs or back, meant the process could be incredibly lengthy, requiring many sessions over extended periods. Enduring this extensive pain was a further demonstration of courage and commitment, reinforcing the significance of the markings. It makes getting a tiny ankle tattoo seem like a walk in the park, or perhaps a gentle float in a very calm pool. Historians still argue whether the symbolism and specific meanings of body moko patterns were as rigidly codified and universally understood across different iwi as facial moko, or if there was more variation and flexibility in their interpretation and application. While broad themes like lineage and status were common, did the specific design elements on a man's thigh carry the exact same meaning regardless of his tribal affiliation? The debate considers the influence of regional artistic styles, the autonomy of individual tohunga, and the potentially more personal or less strictly genealogical nature of some body moko compared to facial moko. A quirky tidbit relates to the preparation of the skin before applying body moko. Some accounts mention the skin being softened or prepared with specific substances before the carving began, potentially to make the process slightly less resistant, or to aid in the ink's retention. While the pain was still immense, any small step that might have eased the process, however slightly, would have been welcomed by the recipient. Imagine prepping your skin for a tattoo with a special ancient Maori moisturizer. Probably didn't help much against the chisel, but it's a thought. Body Moko, though often less immediately visible than facial Moko in daily interactions, played a crucial role in identity and ritual. During significant ceremonies, dances, or gatherings, individuals might expose their body Moko, presenting the full scope of their visual biography to the community. It was a powerful way to assert identity, display status, and connect with the ancestral realm in a holistic manner, showcasing the intricate tapestry of their being woven across their entire form. While the revival of Tā Moko in recent decades has primarily focused on facial Moko, particularly the Moko Kaui for women and renewed interest in Moko Kanohi for men, there is also growing interest in reclaiming and reinterpreting traditional body Moko patterns. Contemporary Maori are exploring how these ancient designs can be applied to modern bodies, connecting with the meanings of strength, lineage, and identity in ways that resonate in the 21st century. It's a way of carrying history not just on your face, but on your entire being. In essence, Tā Moko was a full-body art form, with the face holding the most prominent position, but other areas like the thighs, buttocks, back, and arms serving as important canvases for expressing identity, status, lineage, and personal history. Applied with the same sacred tools and ritualistic intensity as facial Moko, body Moko added further depth and complexity to the individual's visual biography, turning the entire body into a testament to heritage and belonging. It was a comprehensive inscription of self, etched permanently into the skin, a powerful statement of who you were, from head to toe. You've walked through the pain, read the patterns on the face, and even explored the narratives etched onto the body. You've seen Tā Moko as a living, breathing art form, intrinsically woven into the fabric of Maori identity, status, and history. But cultures, like people, don't exist in a vacuum. They encounter other cultures, other ways of seeing the world, and these encounters can bring about profound, sometimes devastating, change. For Tā Moko, that moment of seismic shift arrived with the increasing contact with European explorers, sealers, whalers, traders, and eventually, missionaries and settlers. Imagine the first encounters. Europeans, with their smooth, unmarked faces, or perhaps small, simple tattoos picked up in foreign ports, meeting Maori whose faces and bodies were covered in these intricate, carved designs. The reactions were varied, often a mix of fascination, fear, and outright prejudice. Some early observers were genuinely awestruck by the artistry and the stoicism of the wearers, sketching the patterns and documenting the process in their journals. Others saw it as barbaric, savage, or devilish, failing completely to grasp the deep cultural and spiritual significance. This initial, often biased, documentation provides invaluable, though sometimes flawed, glimpses into the practice before it was significantly disrupted, a mainstream historical fact that forms much of our written record today. The arrival of Europeans brought not only new ideas but also new technologies and, tragically, new diseases and widespread conflict. The introduction of metal tools, particularly iron chisels, initially had an impact on the uhi used by Tohunga Tā Moko. Iron was harder and sharper than bone, potentially allowing for finer detail or a different kind of cut, though the core carving technique remained. Later, the introduction of needles, similar to those used in Western tattooing, began to subtly shift the technique, moving away from the deep carving towards a more surface-level application, though the term Tā Moko continued to be used. It's like upgrading your carving knife, but then someone introduces you to a high-speed engraver. Same goal, very different feel. Far more destructive than changes in tools was the influence of missionaries. Arriving with a fervent belief in the superiority of their own culture and religion, missionaries viewed Tā Moko as a pagan practice, incompatible with Christianity. They actively discouraged, and in some cases outright forbade, converts from getting or displaying Tā Moko. They saw it as a mark of a savage past that needed to be shed for Maori to become civilized Christians. This missionary pressure was a significant factor in the decline of the practice in many areas. You can imagine the sermons. Repent! And maybe get a nice sensible haircut while you're at it, instead of that face thing. The introduction of muskets by European traders also had a devastating and indirect impact on Tā Moko. As tribes acquired firearms, the nature of warfare changed dramatically, becoming far more lethal. The demand for muskets led to an increase in intertribal conflict, as tribes raided each other to acquire goods to trade for weapons. A grim consequence of this trade was the demand for mokai, the preserved, tattooed heads of Maori warriors and chiefs. While head preservation was a traditional practice with specific ritualistic purposes, the European demand transformed it into a commercial enterprise. Tribes would kill enemies, preserve their heads, particularly those with elaborate moko, which fetched a higher price, and trade them for muskets. This horrifying trade incentivized warfare and put individuals with extensive Tā Moko at particular risk. This dark period, driven by European demand for mokai, is a tragic mainstream historical fact that contributed significantly to the disruption and decline of Tā Moko. It turned a sacred mark of identity into a literal target. The cumulative effect of colonization, missionary condemnation, the disruption of traditional social structures, and the devastating mokai trade was a significant decline in the practice of traditional Tā Moko throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries. As Maori society was forcibly changed, as traditional leadership structures were undermined, and as European laws and customs were imposed, the cultural context that gave Tā Moko its meaning and necessity began to erode. The younger generation, growing up in a world increasingly dominated by European influence, sometimes chose not to get moko, or were prevented from doing so by their Christian families or the new social norms. Historians still argue whether the decline of Tā Moko was primarily a direct result of external pressure, missionary activity, legal prohibition, trade, or if internal factors within Maori society, adapting to a changing world and facing immense demographic pressures from disease and warfare, also played a significant role in the shift away from the practice. Was it something that was actively stamped out, or something that faded as the social structures that supported it crumbled? The debate considers the agency of Maori communities in making choices about their cultural practices in the face of overwhelming external forces. A quirky tidbit from this period relates to the European fascination with mokai. Collectors in Europe and America eagerly sought out these preserved heads, viewing them as ethnographic curiosities or grisly trophies. This demand fueled the trade and led to the tragic situation where some Maori were even coerced or killed specifically for their moko to be traded. It's a stark and disturbing example of how cultural artifacts can be completely decontextualized and commodified by outsiders, turning something sacred into a macabre collectible. As the 19th century progressed, the practice of moko kanohi for men became increasingly rare. Moko kaui for women persisted longer, particularly in more remote or traditional communities, but even this began to decline significantly by the early 20th century. The Tohunga Tā Moko, the keepers of the knowledge and skill, passed away, and fewer young people were trained to replace them. The tools were put away, the rituals performed less often, and the vibrant visual language that had adorned faces for centuries began to fade from public view. It was a period of cultural suppression, where wearing the marks of your ancestors became, for many, a dangerous or discouraged act. The story of Tā Moko in this period is one of immense loss and challenge. A sacred art form, so deeply intertwined with identity and history, was pushed to the brink of extinction by the forces of colonization and cultural change. But, as you'll see, the story doesn't end there. Even in the face of overwhelming pressure, the seeds of this ancient practice were preserved, waiting for the moment to bloom again. The silence was not the end. It was a difficult, necessary pause. You've seen how the forces of colonization, particularly the intense pressure from missionaries and the horrific trade in mokai, pushed Tā Moko to the brink. The vibrant art form that had adorned faces and bodies for centuries began to fade from public view. Imagine a world where the visual language you grew up seeing, the map of identity etched onto the faces of your elders, suddenly became rare, even dangerous, to display. This was the reality for Maori during the 19th and early 20th centuries. The public practice of Tā Moko entered a period of silence, a time when it seemed to outsiders, and perhaps even to some within Maori communities grappling with immense change, that the art form was dying out. As European influence expanded and traditional Maori society was disrupted, fewer and fewer individuals received full Moko kanohi. For men, the practice declined relatively rapidly, becoming almost extinct by the late 19th century. The last men with full facial Moko were often elders, living relics of a past era, sometimes viewed with curiosity or pity by the dominant European culture, or even with a degree of embarrassment by Māori who had adopted Christianity and European ways. It was like being the last person who knew how to ride a penny farthing in the age of automobiles, a fascinating sight, but seemingly irrelevant to the New World Order. The Moko kaui for women persisted longer. Perhaps because it was primarily associated with female identity and lineage rather than warrior status or political leadership, or perhaps because women's roles were less immediately targeted by some aspects of colonial disruption. The Chin Moko continued to be practiced in some communities well into the 20th century. Grandmothers and great-grandmothers could still be seen wearing their sacred Chin tattoos, living embodiments of the tradition. However, even the Moko kaui faced immense pressure. Missionary schools discouraged it, and social assimilation meant that younger generations were less likely to receive it. By the mid-20th century, the number of women with Moko kaui dwindled, becoming a mark primarily seen on the very elderly. It was a poignant sight, these last wearers carrying the visible legacy of a tradition that had mostly retreated into memory. But the story of this period isn't just one of decline and loss. It's also a story of quiet resilience and hidden preservation. While the public practice diminished, the knowledge didn't entirely vanish. In remote communities, away from the immediate gaze and pressure of colonial authorities and missionaries, some Tohunga Tā Moko may have continued to practice, albeit perhaps less frequently. Within families, the knowledge of wakapapa and the meanings of patterns were still passed down orally, even if they weren't being immediately etched onto skin. People remembered the designs worn by their parents and grandparents. They kept the stories alive. Think of it like a precious seed bank, carefully guarded during a harsh winter. The vibrant forest above ground might have withered, but the potential for future growth was protected below the surface. The knowledge of Tā Moko went underground, preserved in memory, in waiata, songs, in karero, stories, and perhaps in hidden sketches or carvings. The uhi chisels and meho mallets, once sacred tools displayed with pride, might have been hidden away, tucked into traditional weaving baskets or buried in secret spots, waiting for a safer time. It was a subtle act of resistance, keeping the flame alive even when it couldn't burn brightly. This period of silence was not an erasure, but a difficult pause. The cultural memory of Tā Moko remained. People knew what the patterns meant, they knew who was entitled to wear them, and they remembered the sacredness of the process. Even those who chose not to get Moko themselves, or whose parents had been discouraged from the practice, carried the knowledge within them. It was like knowing a secret language that you rarely got to speak aloud, but which still connected you to your heritage. A mainstream historical fact from this period is that while official records and public visibility of Tā Moko declined dramatically, there were still some individuals, particularly women with Moko kaui, who continued to wear their Moko with pride despite the societal pressure and stigma. These women became living links to the past, their faces serving as powerful, albeit increasingly rare, statements of cultural identity in a changing world. They were the quiet guardians of the tradition, simply by existing and wearing their marks. Historians still argue whether the extent of knowledge lost during this period of decline was uniform across all iwi tribes, or if some regions or lineages managed to preserve more complete knowledge of specific patterns and techniques than others. Did the survival of the tradition vary significantly depending on the level of missionary activity in an area, the remoteness of the community, or the dedication of specific families to keeping the knowledge alive? The debate considers how much of the intricate visual language and the complex ritual protocols were truly forgotten, versus how much was simply hidden away, waiting for the right moment to reemerge. A quirky tidbit from this era are the stories of European ethnographers and collectors who, in their desire to document what they believed was a dying art form, sometimes commissioned the last remaining tohunga to demonstrate their techniques or record patterns. While problematic from a cultural perspective, turning sacred knowledge into academic data or museum exhibits, these efforts, however flawed and driven by colonial motives, inadvertently helped preserve some technical information and visual examples that might otherwise have been lost entirely. It's a complicated legacy, where attempts to capture a culture before it supposedly vanished ended up playing a small, strange role in helping its eventual revival. The silence wasn't a complete void, it was a period of transition. The social, spiritual, and political landscape of Aotearoa was radically altered. Tā Moko, so deeply embedded in the traditional world, had to find a way to survive in this new reality, or risk disappearing forever. The Tohunga Tā Moko, the masters of the craft, became fewer and fewer. The last of the traditional practitioners passed away, taking with them invaluable knowledge of specific techniques, patterns, and rituals. It was a race against time for those who understood the importance of the art form to somehow safeguard its essence for future generations. The period of silence was a testament to the immense pressure placed upon Māori culture, but also to the quiet strength and determination of those who refused to let their heritage be completely erased. They held on to the memories, the stories, and the knowledge, ensuring that when the time was right, the seeds of Tā Moko could sprout again. The face of Maori identity might have seemed smoothed over by colonial influence, but beneath the surface, the intricate patterns and the deep meanings were held close, waiting for the moment of cultural rebirth. It was a long, dark night for the art form, but dawn, eventually, would come. You felt the long, heavy silence fall over the practice of Tā Moko, the period where the vibrant face of Maori identity seemed to dim, pushed into the shadows by the relentless tide of colonization and cultural suppression. The last wearers of traditional Moko Kanohi and Moko Kaui became fewer and fewer, their marked faces living testaments to a world that was rapidly changing, a tradition teetering on the edge of disappearing forever. It seemed, to many, that Tā Moko was destined to become just another chapter in the history books, a lost art form. But cultures, like the Koru spiral itself, hold within them the potential for unfurling, for rebirth, even after the harshest winters. The silence wasn't the end, it was the prologue to a powerful cultural resurgence. Beginning in the mid to late 20th century, a new wave of Maori cultural pride and political activism began to swell. Fueled by a growing awareness of historical injustices and a fierce determination to reclaim their identity and heritage, Maori people began pushing back against the legacies of colonization. This movement encompassed language revitalization, the resurgence of traditional arts like weaving and carving, and a renewed focus on whakapapa and tribal identity. And at the heart of this cultural awakening was the desire to bring Tā Moko back from the brink. It was like the culture collectively decided, "You know what? We're tired of being told who we are. We're putting our faces back on." The challenge was immense. The direct lineage of Tohunga Tā Moko who practiced the traditional carving methods had largely been broken. The intricate knowledge of patterns, their meanings, and the sacred rituals surrounding the practice had fragmented, preserved in scattered oral histories, old journals written by European observers, often biased, remember? And grimly, on the preserved heads, the mokamokai, held in overseas museums. Relearning the art was a monumental task, requiring dedication, research, and a deep respect for the tapu nature of the practice. Pioneering individuals, driven by a passion to reconnect with their ancestors and reclaim this vital part of their heritage, began the slow, painstaking work of piecing the tradition back together. They sought out the last remaining elders who remembered the practice, poring over historical texts, and studying the surviving examples of Moko on photographs and in museum collections. Some even traveled to international museums to study the mokamokai, a poignant and often painful process of confronting the commodification of their ancestors to learn the language etched onto their skin. Imagine having to visit a museum display of severed heads just to figure out how your great-great-grandparents' tattoo patterns fit together, a truly heavy form of historical research. The revival wasn't just about replicating old designs. It was about understanding the underlying principles, the connection to whakapapa, the spiritual significance, and the function of Tā Moko as a living language of identity. It required not just artistic skill, but a deep dive into Maori history, mythology, and cultural protocols. The new generation of practitioners, often referred to as Tohunga Tā Moko in recognition of their mastery, though the term carries the weight of the traditional role, had to earn their stripes through rigorous study and practice. A mainstream historical fact central to this revival is the establishment and growth of Māori cultural institutions and tertiary education programs from the late 20th century onwards. Places like Te Wananga o Aotearoa and other cultural schools provided crucial spaces for the transmission of traditional knowledge, including the history, protocols, and artistic principles of Tā Moko, to a new generation of learners. These institutions played a vital role in formalizing and supporting the cultural rebirth, providing a foundation for practitioners to learn and evolve the art form within a culturally safe environment. The return of Tā Moko was a powerful act of cultural reclamation. For many Māori, particularly women choosing to receive their moko kaui, it was a visible rejection of colonial assimilation and a proud assertion of their Māori identity in a contemporary world. Wearing Tā Moko became a statement of resilience, a way of saying, "We are still here, and our culture is alive." It was a reclaiming of space, making Māori identity visible and undeniable in public life, challenging the historical narrative that had sought to erase it. It's hard to ignore someone's culture when it's literally written on their face. The early days of the revival were not without challenges. There was debate within Māori communities about how the practice should be revived. Should it strictly adhere to traditional methods, including the carving? Or could it incorporate modern tools like tattoo machines while retaining the cultural integrity and meaning? Should moko only be for those with clear whakapapa links, or could it be a broader expression of Māori identity? There was also skepticism and even hostility from some non-Māori, who viewed the return of Tā Moko with suspicion or dismissed it as a mere fashion trend. Historians still argue whether the initial impetus for the revival primarily came from a conscious political movement seeking to assert Māori rights and identity, or if it was a more organic cultural phenomenon driven by individual desires to connect with ancestry and traditional arts. Was the rebirth primarily a top-down push from activists and academics, or a grassroots movement bubbling up from within communities? The debate considers the interplay between political activism, cultural institutions, and individual agency in driving the revitalization. A quirky tidbit from this period of rediscovery is the experimentation with tools. As practitioners sought to understand the traditional carving method, they sometimes experimented with reproducing uhi chisels from bone or other materials, tapping them with mallets to feel the process their ancestors endured. While modern tattoo machines eventually became widely used due to practicality and less extreme pain, this early experimentation highlights the dedication to understanding the physical reality of the traditional art form. It was like trying to learn how to churn butter by hand after only ever using a food processor, a real commitment to the old ways, even if just for learning. Despite the challenges, the momentum grew. More and more young Māori embraced Tā Moko, seeking out practitioners who were reviving the art. The visibility of Tā Moko increased in public life, on television, in sports, and in politics, becoming a powerful and widely recognized symbol of Māori identity in Aotearoa and internationally. What had been hidden and suppressed for generations was once again visible, loud, and proud. The face of Māori identity was being etched anew, line by line, pattern by pattern, a vibrant testament to a culture's refusal to be silenced. The long night was ending, and a new dawn was breaking for Tā Moko. You witnessed the determined efforts to pull Tā Moko back from the brink, the quiet preservation during the long silence, and the powerful cultural rebirth that began to make this sacred art visible again. What was once nearly lost is now, thankfully, a vibrant, living part of Māori culture. Step into the modern world, and you'll see Tā Moko not just in museums or historical photos, but walking among us, etched onto the faces and bodies of Māori people, a powerful, undeniable statement of identity in the 21st century. Today, Tā Moko is experiencing a remarkable resurgence. You see it on politicians speaking in Parliament, on athletes representing New Zealand on the world stage, on artists, teachers, doctors, parents, and young people from all walks of life. It's no longer something hidden away. It's proudly displayed, a visible marker of Māori identity and cultural pride in everyday life. The moko kaui for women has become a particularly strong symbol of this revival, with many young Māori women choosing to receive their chin moko as a powerful act of cultural affirmation, connecting them to their ancestors and asserting their mana in contemporary society. Seeing a woman wearing her moko kaui today is like seeing a living piece of history, a direct link to the strength of her foremothers. It's a statement that says, "My culture is alive, and I carry its legacy on my face." The practice has evolved, blending traditional principles with modern realities. While the goal remains the same, to create a permanent, meaningful mark of identity based on whakapapa and personal history, the tools and techniques have often adapted. Many contemporary tohunga Tā Moko now use modern tattoo machines instead of traditional luhi chisels and meho mallets. This is partly for practical reasons. Machines allow for greater precision and speed, and while still painful, the process is generally less physically traumatic than the traditional carving method. However, the principles of the art form remain rooted in tradition. The designs are still based on the individual's whakapapa, researched and interpreted by the tohunga. The process is still treated with immense respect and often involves karakia and adherence to tapu, though the specific protocols may be adapted for the modern context. It's like using a modern printing press to reproduce ancient texts. The technology is different, but the words and their meaning are preserved and shared. Contemporary Tā Moko designs often incorporate traditional motifs like the koru and pikati, but they can also evolve to reflect modern experiences and the individual's unique journey in today's world. While whakapapa remains central, the moko can also tell the story of personal achievements, significant life events, or connections to modern tribal initiatives. It's a dynamic art form, adapting to the lives of the people who wear it, while remaining anchored in the core values of identity and heritage. It's like adding a new chapter to a very old, very important book. This visibility and popularity aren't without challenges. One ongoing issue is cultural appropriation. As Tā Moko becomes more widely recognized, there's a risk of non-Māori adopting the designs or motifs without understanding their deep cultural significance, reducing them to mere fashionable patterns. This is deeply offensive to Māori, as Tā Moko is intrinsically linked to whakapapa and is not meant to be worn by those outside the culture. It's like wearing someone else's family crest because you thought it looked cool, completely missing the point and disrespectful. Educating people about the sacredness and cultural specificity of Tā Moko is an ongoing effort. Another challenge is ensuring the integrity of the practice within Māori communities themselves. With the break in the direct line of traditional tohunga, there are ongoing discussions and debates about authenticity, training standards, and who is qualified to create and wear Tā Moko. Ensuring that practitioners have not only technical skill but also deep cultural knowledge and respect for the protocols is crucial for the art form's continued vitality and authenticity. It's not just about learning to draw lines, it's about learning to read and write a sacred language. Despite these challenges, the future of Tā Moko looks strong. A new generation of dedicated tohunga Tā Moko is emerging, trained in cultural institutions and through apprenticeships, ensuring the knowledge and skill are passed down. These practitioners are not only masters of the art but also cultural leaders, guiding individuals through the profound process of receiving their moko and helping them connect with their heritage. A mainstream historical fact is that the establishment of formal training programs and cultural wananga institutions has been instrumental in standardizing and transmitting the knowledge of Tā Moko in the contemporary era, providing a structured pathway for new practitioners. The dialogue around Tā Moko is also evolving. It's recognized not just as an art form, but as a powerful tool for decolonization, healing, and cultural revitalization. For many, wearing Tā Moko is a source of immense pride, strength, and connection to their identity that helps counter the historical trauma of cultural suppression. It's a visible act of self-determination, a declaration that Māori culture is thriving and will continue to flourish. It makes your standard live, laugh, love, wall art seem a bit understated. Historians still argue whether the use of modern tattoo machines fundamentally alters the spiritual significance and cultural integrity of Tā Moko, or if the continuity of meaning, intent, and adherence to cultural protocols is the most important factor. While the physical sensation and the resulting texture are different from the traditional carving method, is the core essence of Tā Moko, as a mark of identity and whakapapa, maintained when applied with a machine? The debate considers how much the technique is integral to the meaning, versus how much the meaning resides in the design, the intent, and the cultural context. A quirky tidbit about contemporary Tā Moko is the increasing use of other colors beyond the traditional black, incorporating elements inspired by natural pigments that might have been used historically for shading or decoration, but applied with modern inks. While black remains dominant, seeing subtle reds, browns, or even blues incorporated into designs reflects an exploration of the art form's potential while still drawing from a traditional color palette derived from the land. It's like adding a splash of color to that black and white historical photograph, bringing it to life in a new way. The journey of Tā Moko, from its mythical origins in Rarotonga, through centuries of intricate carving and profound meaning, to its near extinction and powerful rebirth, is a testament to the resilience and enduring strength of Maori culture. It is a living art form, adapting, evolving, and continuing to tell the stories of identity, lineage, and achievement on the faces and bodies of Maori people today. It is a bridge between the past, the present, and the future, a permanent declaration that the history etched into the skin will never be forgotten. And now, as the journey through the intricate art and meanings of Tā Moko comes to a close, feel the weight of that history settle gently. The tapping of the uhi chisels fades into the distance, the chants soften, and the vibrant patterns etched onto skin begin to blur at the edges of your mind. You've traveled through time, touched upon ancient myths, felt the intensity of the process, and learned to read the stories written on the faces of the past and present. The faces you imagined at the beginning of our journey now hold deeper meaning, each line a whisper of ancestry, each curve a ripple of history. Let the images soften, the details become less sharp, as you drift away from the world of carved skin and into the quiet space of rest. The stories remain, held in memory, in culture, and in the gentle rhythm of your own breath. There's nothing more to decipher now, no more pain to imagine, just the settling calm after a long exploration. Allow the weight of history to become light, the intricate patterns to smooth out, and the thoughts to quieten. Just breathe softly, and let the peace of the night wash over you,